welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We're looking at Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man, back where all of the MCU craziness began. And joining us again today, we have chaplain of the Movies by Minute community, Father David Mowry. Welcome back.
Greetings, true believers.
Yay!
See, it works on
Indeed.
multiple levels because I'm a priest and we're talking
It
about Marvel.
really does.
Yeah.
Look at
They taught me to explain the jokes in seminary because that makes it funnier.
That's a monastery gag.
Well, today we are talking about minute 87 of Iron Man. On today's show, the minute starts with Raza welcoming Obadiah to his camp and ends with Raza saying that Stark has made a masterpiece of death.
Oh, what a poet.
That Raza. I was a little disappointed he doesn't expound quite as eloquently as he did when he was talking to Tony and Yinsen about Mongolia and Genghis Khan and all of the things. He really had some great tales to tell back in the cave. And I mean, he talks nicely here, but I was like, I really would love to have had him do one of his stories here about weapons of mass destruction.
Well, you know, a cave wall explodes in your face, and that takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. It's gonna kind of take him a little bit to get his self-confidence back, to kind of get his poetic legs under him. So he's doing okay in a bad situation.
Well, and he's a beta now, right? There's a new alpha in the camp, and only the alpha can monologue, you guys. That's lesson number 1.
That's true. That's true. He was our foe alpha.
Right.
Now we know who the real alpha is. He's no longer allowed to monologue.
Alpha in name only.
I love squabbling bad guys in movies.
This is that scene.
This is the scene. That's
They're both on the same team, but they still have to give each other a hard time.
right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. Yeah, the whole, well, if you killed him when you were supposed to.
Well, even before then, just the look at the big exaggerated look at the side, like, oh, well, that's a thing, isn't it? Oh, boy, he really did a number on you.
You mean looking at the bad makeup job?
Is this, are we going to talk about that right now? Is it time?
I think that can of worms just got open. They're all crawling away, so we better get after it now.
I think so, Andy. Jump all over it.
We're going to get certainly some better views in tomorrow's minute. But right now, yeah, it looks like he just kind of laid his head down in a plate of spaghetti and just has a bunch of sauce on his face. I've always, like, he looked so much better earlier. Why is it in this particular moment, I just really find that they struggled to get the makeup looking right.
It is. It's like you can see the soggy crepe paper sliding down his face.
Or just they took a knife with some jam on it and just kind of spread it on
Yeah.
the side of his head. Because it looks so sticky.
If you look carefully, you can see the seeds.
It does look sticky.
So gross. Well, and then, right next to him, as we cut back and forth to Obadiah, is it me, or did they very, very clearly use a little bit of makeup to complete Bridges' beard up over his ear? It looks like a brown strap of makeup.
Yeah.
This is not the greatest sequence for makeup. Let's just say.
Well, that's important for audience immersion. They'd be distracted by the beard just floating on Jeff Bridges' face, so they need to anchor it. Otherwise, people would just be wondering, how does the beard stay on his face that way? Because it's got to hang from something. I don't understand.
Well, no, wait. Do we have any biblical tie to the mystic beard, the mystic floating beard? Tell me there's something.
Maybe in the 4th book of Esdras, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not totally familiar with that one.
Okay. All right. But at least you're telling me there's something to research. That's
I'm
good.
saying
That's
there's a
good.
chance.
There's a chance.
There's a chance. We do get a little more close-up of Stane this time. His ears still look pretty clean.
Now, you and those ears. I want to apologize to our ophthalmologist listeners. I misidentified the field of medical expertise. Ophthalmologists, of course, are eye doctors. For an ear doctor, that'd be how do you pronounce this? Otolaryngologist?
Laryngologist?
Gesundheit.
Yeah, otolaryngologist, right.
Laryngologist.
So my apologies to the American Ophthalmologist Society.
We will take all the letters that we get and forward them your way.
Please. Yeah. For those to titanicminute@gmail.com.
Where everything's going under. This is a really interesting minute, just because, like you said, we do get kind of that square off between these guys. They've got to puff up their chest a little bit, and Stane comes out on top. But we get the lines, well, if you killed him when you were supposed to, and you paid us trinkets to kill a prince.
Great line.
Which is, it's a great line, and it all works so well. These guys have a fantastic bad guy chemistry going on here. I love the way that it's just, the whole scene plays just so dark, and I don't want to say mysterious, but there's just something about it that just feels. We're really with the bottom dwellers now. These guys are just awful.
Well, it's a lot like falling in love. You have to find the right person. It has to feel sinister right off the start, and that's not something you can force. That's just chemistry. That's just going to happen. But my question is, how did these guys meet? I mean, what section on Evil's Craigslist does Obadiah put the want ad on? Lonely tech industrialist seeks multinational terrorist cabal, must love technology.
Right?
How is it that they connect with each other? I mean, is that the dark web that I hear about?
Yeah, right.
Is that how that happens?
Well, it's so funny because I was thinking about this, because I was looking at all these guys that Stane has with him. He brings like his own army, basically. And my first thought was, oh, those are probably the same bodyguards that he had when he was at the fundraiser. But I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense for him to use his bodyguards, then bring them over to do all these like black ops things. But I was like, oh, maybe it is. And maybe he's got his whole secret troop of people that he's kind of got built into Stark Industries that are doing all these nefarious deeds. I mean, obviously he's shipping giant, containers full of weapons over here. So it seems like something that must be more than dark web, but it does make you wonder how. I mean, it's all under the table, as we've heard them say earlier in the film.
Yeah.
How exactly do these guys connect?
That's an interesting question, and it just feels like we're catching them in the middle of project mode. Like what they answered with this relationship is how all of those weapons got to the camp in Gulmira in the first place, right? That there is a nefarious underground weapons trading operation that Stane is aware of and facilitates. And that's how, those weapons get there. At least that's the sort of canon that's filling in my head with this sequence. And so it sort of feels like Stane maybe called his buddy Raza and said, hey, I know we've been working together for years on this other thing, but I got an idea. Do you want to work with me on a very special project? And that's what we're kind of in media res right now. We get to see this. This is a project management meeting right here.
Raza, I know we've been playing bridge together for 2 decades, and I feel like you're the brother I never had. I think I can trust you with this secret revenge project that I have against the son of my dearest collaborator.
Yes, that's it. It's like you read my mind.
It's the bridge connection.
Yes, it's all about the bridge connection.
Oh, the evil bridge club. You got to watch out for that.
Really?
Club.
It's a dangerous one to be a part of.
Raza, Obadiah Stane, Jeff Cross, and Loki.
Talk about bad guy chemistry. Oh,
it's like the bad guy counseling session in Wreck-It Ralph. All the bad guys are just sitting around talking about, it's okay to be bad. These guys are just like, we're not that bad. Let's play some bridge. Next week, mahjong.
Right.
Oh, it is a strange thing, and I think over this weekend, the next couple of weeks, it will be interesting to see what hints we get of connections that we have that might show us how really these people are connected, and exactly how on the books the company is versus how off the books the company is. So I'm curious to see how that all comes to be over the coming weeks. But here it just seems like some nefarious, like you said, it's the dark web. I mean, I don't know how people like this find each other, but they do.
Andy, talk just a little bit about the script, and because I feel like there's a hint at a reference here that we've talked about before a little bit. And maybe this is a great example of a decision that was changed.
Yeah, this was one of those moments where I think they were, I don't know, I'm torn if they were trying to decide how the story was going to be framed. Like, was Obadiah the bad guy yet, or was he just an agent of the Mandarin? And this was just a conversation between minions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened when it's right in this scene when right after Raza says, "You paid us trinkets to kill a prince, an insult to me and the man whose ring I wear. Close on Raza's ring, the familiar 10 interlocked rings. Obadiah, I think it's best we don't get him involved in this. And then, I've come a long way to see this weapon. Show me." And that's the hint that we have of the Mandarin here, which is interesting. And we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more in the coming minutes. But it's interesting that they still were kind of going down that road with the Mandarin as, if not the villain, the possibility of something that they might be setting up for a later film.
Right. This is the "you're going to need a bigger boat" moment. Like there is an even bigger bad guy that we're all scared of in some way, shape, or form. And I think it, to me, it's a good decision to leave that out. That may have been a fan reference too far.
I appreciate the difficulty that the scriptwriters find themselves in, because can you do an Iron Man movie without including the Mandarin? It's like doing a Spider-Man movie without the villain being the Green Goblin in the first time. It is the main antagonist. Tim Burton's Batman movie was Batman and the Joker, because there is no more iconic villain to oppose Batman than the Joker. Mm-hmm. And, to do what Christopher Nolan did, to put that off for a movie, was a bold, creative choice. So you're in the midst of this story. Here's all this lore and mythos about this character. He's got this big villain and who is very problematic. So what do we do with this character? Let's do nothing and just ignore him.
Let's put him off for a few movies while we figure out how we want to move forward with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably smart. It's interesting that the Mandarin is somebody that they did circle back to, and it'll be interesting to talk about that when we get to Iron Man 3 and the way that they decided to kind of get through some of the problematic issues, and if it worked or if it just created its own set of issues. I'm looking forward to that conversation in a few years.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Well, it looks like Stane's guys have some issues here, because they look pretty outnumbered. I don't know. I'm looking at 15, maybe 20 of these 10-ring terrorists, and they're all cutthroat, hard scrabble kind of guys. You got these, Nancy boy looking guys, all dressed in black, and there are about 8 of them. They don't stand a chance if it came to a fight.
Nope, not at all. Yeah.
No, not at all.
And we get to see that in the beautiful jib shot that kind of the camera goes up. We, as Raza and Stane enter the tent, we kind of rise up to kind of just see this group before we cut into the tent. And once we're in the tent, it's a great moment when Stane finally gets to see the suit and looks at it. And I think the script defines well what Jeff Bridges' reaction is. The script says, "Stane has seen the future." And I think that line says a lot about his reaction to seeing this metal suit that Tony used to escape his situation of being held captive in Afghanistan.
That's a really great way to write this reaction, because this scene could play out very similarly even if Raza wasn't even in the tent with him.
Yeah, right.
And the way that he takes the suit in, this is how he did it. And you can see the wheels turning in his own mind. He's starting to piece everything together. Raza may as well not be there, because now Stane has what he's been looking for.
Exactly.
And he walks into the tent and takes on the CEO power pose, which is perfect, standing opposite the suit. His arms crossed, his head back. Mm-hmm. CEO power move.
Taking it in.
Yeah.
Totally. And then pacing around it too.
Right.
Really taking it in from every angle. It's great. This is something I love watching Jeff Bridges do. Just the way that he stares at every little piece as he's kind of looking at it and just studying it. And you can totally see those wheels spinning in his head as he's putting the pieces together and figuring out his next steps. I think that it works so well, and almost to the point where you don't need to hear anything that Raza is saying, because it really is just great watching Jeff Bridges do this.
Well, let's pause a moment and tip our hats to the members of the 10 Rings who were able to literally put the pieces together. They were having a little bit of trouble earlier in the movie, but they have managed They have managed to actually put this thing together in a semblance of proper order. That's some impressive reverse engineering given the conditions they had to work under.
Well, what we don't see in this scene, but we do have reference to in the script, and actually what we didn't see them having, I don't recall, in the earlier scenes when the guards were looking at the pieces after they collected from the desert, trying to piece it all together, is the onion paper. And now in the script, we actually have Raza holding up the onion skin schematics, and he apparently found those and used those to kind of put the rest of it together. So we don't see that here. Although if you look, he does kind of walk over to his table that's kind of off to the side. And I don't know, maybe the onion skin schematics are laying over there. But regardless, they did manage to piece it together quite nicely because it looks pretty solid here.
You got high tech and low tech both on that table because I just noticed there are 2 lit candles underneath the bright fluorescent lights next to the laptop. Who, Abdul, did you leave the candles lit again? We've been over this. This is fire safety hazard.
Have you seen what this does to onion paper?
I like to imagine that he's a subscriber to Scentsy, and he gets the candles shipped in to provide better aromas.
That's a heck of a shipping and handling fee, I tell you what.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it sure is. I also, weirdly, I don't know why I find that it is just really good production design work, but I love the fact that back in the corner, we see kind of a little shelf of a bunch of, food and other sundries, pots and pans and things just sitting back there. It's just one of those things that just comforts me knowing, oh, okay, I like the fact that the production designers realize these guys are going to have to eat while they're camping out here. Let's give them some food.
That's good verisimilitude. It makes it feel like this is a space where human beings live and have to operate.
Exactly.
Right. And we at least still know how to be a good host.
Right. Which we'll see in tomorrow's Minute.
Emily Post is alive and well in the camp.
Well, they're not savages. Come now.
I don't think I have anything else for this minute. What about you guys?
I have another little section of Christ and the Cape, if you'll indulge me.
Oh, please.
So yesterday we talked about anthropology and then kind of the theological understanding, looking at the rather high view of human beings that Iron Man as a movie has. Now I want to turn and look at kind of Iron Man's Christology, that is the theological understanding of Christ. Now I'm going to take some liberties with this because Jesus does not make an appearance in this movie, and I looked, but we understand a superhero is always a savior figure. That is what superheroes do. They save people, and any superhero movies that are deconstructing that type revolve around superheroes who don't want to save people. So what kind of savior is Iron Man? Well, he is not an alien from another planet. He is not an Amazonian princess. He is not the inheritor of a special bloodline. He doesn't get the Green Lantern. He is a self-made hero. He creates his own suit. He creates something that encases him and protects him and gives him more power than he has naturally. So it's a thoroughly modern idea, this self-made Messiah. He's kind of the not the spirit-anointed Messiah, but he's a tech-anointed Messiah. The only special qualities that Tony Stark has are his tremendous intelligence and his vast bank account. But he has no supernatural powers. Those are all within the realm of imagination. We can imagine a human being with a high IQ and a lot of money. Elon Musk, for instance. Now, and I'm sure Elon has tried to make some Iron Man suits in his spare time. We have Iron Man now as this tech anointed savior. So not someone who has that power inherently. The other thing that's interesting about Tony Stark as a hero, as a savior, we have a death and resurrection motif at the beginning of his story. So the beginning of this movie has Tony go through a death experience. Shrapnel lodges in his heart. Jensen performs the surgery to save his life. And then his new life begins when he emerges from the cave in the Iron Man suit.
Huh.
Now that's, that's just me reading this, since I am so familiar with the Christ story, I just can't help but see a man walking out of a cave and think, oh, it's like Jesus. And then what does he do? He lifts off into the sky. he ascends into heaven. Now, in true Marvel fashion, he then crashes spectacularly in the desert. But there is this sense of a rebirth. Tony comes back different. Something has changed in him. He is not the same man he once was. And I'll have more to say about that later. But here we have these echoes of the Christ story, even in someone as unchristian as Tony Stark, and not exactly living a life of high morality, Tony, but still in the telling of how he becomes the hero, how he becomes the savior, both in being anointed with power, granted of his own making, but still that makes him more than he once was, and this death and resurrection motif in the story. It makes for some interesting parallels and connections. I think it shows that as a Western culture, and Marvel is a very Western cultural product, we are still haunted by the story of Jesus Christ. We still have elements of that story, even in something like a summer blockbuster superhero movie, because there is something enduringly true about these motifs of a supernatural power, of death and resurrection.
Can you think of any other Marvel characters that have had similar motifs that you've caught that have been? I don't want to say so obvious, but I mean,
well, yeah, the cave analogy is very obvious. I mean, it's
right.
There are some obvious scriptural references here. I'm like the Jericho missile. Okay, obvious biblical metaphor is obvious.
Jericho,
the Jericho.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Captain America has a similar kind of death and resurrection experience. Okay. Let's see, what else? Thor has a sort of, he follows the pattern of what we in theology called kenosis, that is the self-emptying of Christ. So in Paul's letter to the Philippians, we have the great Christological hymn where Paul speaks of Christ. Though he was in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at. Therefore, he took the form of a slave, becoming human in appearance. Thor is humbled in the same way, not of his own choosing, and that's where the difference lies, but Thor becomes human in that story and learns humility. It echoes the line from the letter to the Hebrews where it speaks of Christ learning obedience by what he suffered, and we can see that in Thor's story as well. Doctor Strange is very New Agey and Gnostic, so there's not a lot of parallels there.
What about Hulk? What about Hulk and his stories of exile and transformation?
There's... exile and transformation. There's something there. I'd have to think about that a little bit more.
We're coming back to that one soon.
Hulk is more of Hulk is a modern day Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster story, which itself Mary Shelley called the story of a modern day Prometheus. So it's this story of science and knowledge gone awry that redounds to the scientist's tragedy and misery. Scriptural references for the Hulk. I'd have to come back to that one. I mean, well, hold on. There's Samson. The story of Samson. So with his great strength, he is maimed at the end. He's weakened, where the only thing he can do after he's captured by the Philistines, he's blinded and he's made to play the fool before the court of the Philistines. He rests his hands against the pillars of the temple, and with his last burst of strength destroys the whole temple and brings down the house, literally, on top of all of his captors. But in terms of superhuman strength, Samson's the one that comes to mind. Yeah, rage isn't really a highly regarded virtue in the Bible. So,
it's not up there. Not high on the list.
Not a lot of parallels, no.
Well, we'll be talking about that next year. So we'll look forward to we'll give you some time to do some research and see what you can come up with.
Excellent.
Oh, well, Father Mowry, it was fantastic chatting with you about Iron Man today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was great. Where can people find you out on the internet?
People can find me. If you're interested in hearing more of my blathering on Movies by Minutes podcast, you can go to my website, Father David Mowry. That's Father, all spelled out, Father, FatherDavidMowry.com. I have links there to all my other podcast appearances. If you're liking these Christ in the Cape sections, I recommend listening into the minutes I was on for Dawn of Justice Minute. We talked about the theological and philosophical implications of Superman and Batman in some detail with the DC Cinematic Minute guys.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Good stuff all around. Well, everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at thenextreel.com/Patreon. Until next time, true believers.